Prepare to read. Young Frank, architect, genre study. Realistic fiction stories are made up, but could happen in real life. Look for characters who act and talk like real people. Settings that are real places. Events that could really happen. Set a purpose. Read to understand events in the beginning, middle, and end. Look for details in the words and pictures to help you. Retell the events in your own words. Power words. Floor. Straight. Designed. Whole. Real. Model.
Okay, boys and girls, I think that you know what a lot of these power words mean. So we're just going to go over a few of them. Designed. This story is about an architect. An architect has to design or draw a picture of what they want the building to look like. Whole. This is not like a hole in the ground. This is whole like the whole big thing, or the whole cookie, the whole sandwich, like we talked about when we were doing fractions. And model. Sometimes you build a small model before you build a bigger thing. So next, we're going to listen to a little bit about Frank Lloyd Wright, who is basically the model for this story.
Build background. Architect Frank Lloyd Wright. An architect designs or plans buildings. Some architects make models of their ideas. Others create drawings to show how all the pieces of a building will fit together. Frank Lloyd Wright was a very famous architect. He designed many kinds of buildings all around the world. He once got a letter from a 12-year-old named Jim. Jim wanted a doghouse for his dog Eddie, so Mr. Wright designed it. Eddie had a very fancy doghouse. The story Young Frank Architect is about a boy named Frank who is an architect and has a dog named Eddie.
Young Frank, architect.
Young Frank's apartment is on the top floor of this tall building. He is an architect. He lives with his spotted dog, Eddie, and his grandpa, Old Frank, who is also an architect. Young Frank makes things. He uses anything he can get his hands on. Macaroni, books, dishes, spoons, dogs. Dogs? Not Eddie. Yes, even Eddie. But only sometimes. One morning, young Frank made a chair using toilet paper rolls. Said Old Frank. I don't think architects make chairs. And you can't really sit in this one, can you? I guess not, said young Frank. He also made a skyscraper out of books. Buildings should be straight, said Old Frank, not twisted and wiggly. Hey, are those my books? Just before lunch, young Frank designed a whole city. Said Old Frank. Cities are made one building at a time and take hundreds of years. At lunch, young Frank said, Grandpa, I'm not sure I want to be an architect anymore. Said Old Frank. I know. Let's go to the museum. I think it will be very good for you to see the work of some real architects. Don't you? I haven't been to the museum in years and years, said Old Frank. Me neither, said young Frank. They saw lots of things, including a wiggly chair designed by an architect named Frank. Old Frank looked at it sideways. A twisted tower by an architect named Frank. Old Frank cleaned his glasses.
Now, boys and girls, remember what old Frank said to young Frank when he built his chair. He said, architects don't build chairs. But, at the museum they saw one. He also said that buildings should be straight, not wiggly. But at the museum, what did they see?
They also saw a giant model of a whole city designed by another architect named Frank. Are all architects named Frank? Asked young Frank. I don't think so, said old Frank. When they got home, old Frank said, architects really do make chairs and twisted towers and cities, too. I guess I was wrong. That's okay, Grandpa, said young Frank. Even I don't know some things. That evening, young Frank and old Frank made chairs. Chairs with zigzags, chairs with crazy legs, and a little chair that was perfect for Eddie. They made buildings of every shape and size. Tall ones, fat ones, round ones, and one made from chocolate chip cookies. Eddie, don't eat the library, said young Frank, and please get back on your chair. When they were done, they had a whole city. Woof, said Eddie. Shh, Eddie, said young Frank. Stay until I tell you. Good boy. Later that night, when young Frank was tucked in his bed, he felt a bit older, like a real architect. For his part, old Frank felt younger and a little wiser. Woof, said Eddie.
Okay, so now I want you to answer these questions. You're going to retell, which means you tell the story in your own words. Tell about the main events from the beginning, the middle, and the end. And I want you to think about the different kinds of things that architects do. Okay, so you are going to type this out and let us know. I hope you enjoyed this story. I thought it was really cool. And maybe you can work with your grandma or grandpa to build some things, and maybe they will feel young again. I hope you can have some fun.